we'll start.
Before we start, can I just yell about the microphones?
Yep.
Please just ask to help the broadcasters. Firstly, if you have a question, you just put your hand up and then the chair will mark you down. And when it's your turn to ask the question, if you could just keep your hand up so the roving mics can find you. And then if you wait maybe 3 seconds before you start speaking, just so they have time to turn your microphone on so you can be heard. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Dave. That's it. Okay. Are we already switched on? Yes, we are. Right. Okay, well, welcome everyone to the first meeting of the Community Zone S for the new municipal year and for the new council. Can I just welcome the new members? Look forward to your input as we move forward. Put you under scrutiny for putting the cabinet to scrutiny and making sure that we're doing our job. If anybody's got any questions at any time, please do indicate and let me know. But I look forward to working with each and every one of you. And thank you all for attending today. First of all, we'll go to item 1, apologies. I've been informed of Councillor Darren Pemberton and Mark Ryder. Are there any other apologies that we are aware of? Members happy to accept those? Yes, thank you. Members, item 2, members' disclosure of pecuniary and non-pecuniary interests. Do we have any disclosures at any point? Councillor Richard Baxter Payne, thank you. Just if you wait a moment for the microphone.
I need to declare an interest. Agenda item 7, there are articles within that which will fall within my remit of work, particularly around the recycling and the composting element of it.
Okay. Those noted. Thank you. No other declarations at this point. Obviously, if members do realise that they have an interest, please do declare at the appropriate time. Chair's announcements. I have no chair's announcements other than to what I said at the outset, is to welcome you all to the committee and look forward to working with you all. And that said, we'll move on with the item 4, minutes of previous meetings. Minutes of the meeting for 17th of February 2021. Is everybody happy with those minutes? If they can remember that far back, it's been a while now, and I know that some members are here from the previous meetings. You happy with that? Thank you, Councillor Pandal. Does that need seconding? Everyone happy? I'll sign those minutes. Okay, and then also in connection with the minutes of the meeting on the 25th of May, which was the full council meeting, whereby we appointed myself as chair and Councillor Jonathan Chilvers as vice chair. Members happy I sign both sets of minutes? Yep, all agreed, thank you. Yep. It's going to be at the back, isn't it? There we go. Thank you. Minutes of previous meetings. Public speaking. I've had no notification of any public speakers, so we'll move straight on to item 3, questions to portfolio holders. So for the committee to indicate if they have any questions of any portfolio holders at this point in relation to the upcoming works that are planned and are in the paper. Councillor Chilvers, just wait.
Thank you very much, Chair. And this is a question for Councillor Redford as Transport Portfolio Holder. I know you won't be able to necessarily give a full answer now, but I'd like to ask you about the knuckle train line from Leamington through to Kenilworth to Nuneaton, which is currently operating a significantly reduced service. Apparently this is due to driver shortage, not because of low passenger numbers because of COVID, because it's been deprioritised by the West Midlands Railway. Obviously we don't have direct influence, but the county has put a huge amount of money into this line, and we're now not getting the expected return on investment because of this reduction in service. So is there anything we can do to try and remedy this situation?
Thank you, Councillor Chilvers.
No, thank you.
If you just wait a moment to the microphone, thank you. Councillor
Thank you,
Redford.
Chairman. Councillor Chilvers is quite right, actually. We do actually expect a return on our investment. What I will do is I don't have the answers at hand for the issues that he's posed, but I will get a briefing note out, if you would wish, Chairman, to address the issues that Councillor Chilvers has brought up.
Thank you. Councillor Fradgley, I think you've just been seated over this side. Thank you, Councillor Redford. Any other members' questions for Cabinet members? Councillor Humphreys. Just,
Councillor,
just,
can you wait till the
Okay.
yeah, connected.
This is about rail, but it's integrated as far as I'm concerned in terms of buses and light rail as well. On the peripherals of the combined authority, they've got a sprint system in terms of the single ticketing, and I just wonder if it's part of the negotiation and collaboration we can actually deal with allowing a single ticketing system working across Warwickshire as well. Thank you.
That was to Councillor Redford. Yeah, Councillor Redford. Just if you wait a moment for the microphone.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't have the specific answer to that, but I will get it for the councillor. And again, if you would like a briefing note, Chairman, I'll get it sent out.
Yeah, if that could be sent out to all members, appreciate that.
All
please.
members, yes, I'll make a note.
To all the committee members. Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Sinclair. You wanted to... You can indicate which cabinet member you're posing your question to, if you know.
Relates to waste disposal, so
Okay, it's Councillor Timms.
Councillor Timms. The papers indicated an increased level of recycling on the doorstep as opposed to within recycling centres as a consequence of COVID. Are we anticipating that this situation will persist post the relaxation of the current restrictions?
Okay, Councillor Timms.
Yes, we have had an increase in collections from recycling at the curbside, and that's all done by the districts and boroughs as the collection authority. Of course, that's been as a result of people having deliveries at home, much more so during this period. And obviously trips to the household recycling centres have been reduced because we have to enforce social distancing and have to continue enforcing social distancing at this time. We envisage being taking a few steps back and reviewing all of the data that we've received throughout this pandemic from the figures that are going in, and obviously we'll be looking at how our household recycling centres work and whether they're in the right places. We did put some money in the budget for a strategic review to take place of the household recycling centres, so we will be working on that. And of course we want to increase recycling and composting figures right across the county, wherever they go to.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members indicating? Sorry, Councillor Pandaher. Just wait for the microphone. Thank you.
Thank you. Question about procurement process. So when we authorize any job to do the job, so do we check their prices right? Because sometimes we find their prices are 3 or 4 times higher than what that job can be done, especially with our delegated budget. So 35,000 not go very far away. When we work out, we only few jobs done. So it's only price, maybe 3 or 4 times costly than can be done cheaply somewhere else. Thank you.
Thank you. I presume that's to Councillor Redford in relation to highways contracts, is it?
Sorry, Chairman, the acoustics are not good.
Oh, right. It was in relation to the costings on highways contracts and the pricings for those contracts. The concern, I think, if I'm understanding you correctly, Councillor Bandar, the concern is the level of pricing for those contracts. Is that correct? You're wanting to know why it seems to be such a high price for highways contracts? Is that? And so the question probably is, are we paying? Sorry, just want to clarify it.
So, sorry again, when we ask to do any work, especially I can only mention with the delegated budget, so very small job, and if you find out the price maybe 3 or 4 times higher than what can be done, same job, maybe with the other professional contractor. Okay. The contractor we use, we check the prices against that price is right or not for that job.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Redford, did you want to reply?
Thank you, Chairman. Interestingly, I had this same question raised at a parish council meeting last night, concerned about the methodology that we used on pricing of contracts. And I told the parish council at that meeting that I would look into the issue with officers, and that's my intention, Chairman.
Okay. Will we be, sorry, question I suppose really before you send the microphone away. Will a further report be coming to this committee then, or will you be doing a briefing note update to the members?
If you would like a briefing note, Chairman, to be sent out, I can arrange that.
I think that'd be helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sorry. Okay, I see no other members indicating for questions to Cabinet portfolio holders. No, I do thank you for attending. I know some of you got other meetings on as well and may need to leave, but we do have officers here that I'm sure will be able to pick up any points that may be raised during the rest of the meeting if you need to. So thank you very much for those. Moving on then to item 4 is the Bermuda connectivity. Sorry, I missed one. The economic, sorry, 3.1 economic development update, beg your pardon, from Councillor, sorry. Is that from the portfolio holder or is it from the officer?
It's going to be a joint effort.
Oh, it's a joint effort. Who wants to start? Mr. Aikenhill.
So yes, just a quick introduction to the economic development update, which you should have received. Sorry, it was slightly late in circulation. You'll see there's a number of things going on in terms of our economic recovery work, our ongoing business support, and supporting residents on employment and skills. And at the back of the section, there's also a collation of sort of relevant news of things happening in the local area. Just wanted to highlight a few key things that have been going on since last time we presented to overview and scrutiny. So firstly is our Adapt and Diversify grant scheme. This is something that we put in place using some funding provided by government to support COVID outbreak management. And this is the idea of this fund is to sit alongside district and borough funding. You may be aware that district and boroughs were provided funding to provide grants to businesses who were forced to close or were impacted by closures, and they were grants being paid out through the business rate system. This was very much those grants from districts and boroughs are very much about helping businesses get through the times where they've had to be closed. Our scheme tries to sit alongside that and is very forward-looking. The idea is looking to businesses thinking about how they can reopen and what they need to do to diversify their business activities in light of the current situation. So through this grants programme, we have 1.5 million that we have allocated to this. We've done it through 2 rounds. First round, we put out, and on both occasions actually, when we've launched the rounds, they've been opened on one. We've given prior notice to businesses. They knew it was coming and they could prepare applications and quotes. But the day we opened the applications, we then had to close them on the same day because of the volume of applications that we were receiving. So I think in the first one, we had £1 million set aside, and we had nearly £1.4 million worth of bids in, so we had to close it at that point. The team have done an amazing job going through all of those grant applications, identifying which ones are suitable. Unfortunately, we did have a number of ineligible applications, a lot of people putting in very, should we say, high-level applications, lacking detail about what they would do, which we couldn't take forward. But on all of the ones we've taken in, we've gone back to the company, advised them where they could go for other help, or helped them think about a future round. But the progress is shown in the programme. We have given out quite a significant number of grants in round 1. Round 2, again, was oversubscribed and the team are working through, but we've already given out nearly £600,000 in that, and we expect to give out the remainder over the coming few weeks. So that's a scheme, as I say, that's really helping businesses think about their businesses their business plan going forward and how they can adapt. Another one I wanted to raise was the Survive, Sustain, Grow programme, which has been a very successful programme that we put in place to help businesses respond again to the COVID pandemic. This programme provides bespoke specialist advice and support to businesses. So we allocate businesses who come into the programme a dedicated consultant based on their particular sector. And we've looked at hospitality, retail, manufacturing and other business sectors. These businesses will get this dedicated consultant who will go in and talk to the business, talk through their business plan, think through what they've been doing, how the pandemic's impacted on their business, and what they could then do to adjust and adapt. And then, of course, this is very much a front end to that grant programme that we talked about as well. So it's helping businesses think through what they need to do to get their business back up and running, and then can lead to a future grant where it's needed to support them. So we've supported nearly, we've engaged nearly 600 businesses on the programme so far. Feedback has been really positive. And I think what's really interesting is the wide range of businesses we've helped, and the wide range of sort of diversification activity that businesses have gone through. I won't go into that now, but we do have a website, it's in the pack, which tries to provide some case studies around all those businesses. And we're going to do a bit of a wrap-up when that programme comes to an end in the next month or so. We'll follow that through and provide some really useful feedback on what's happened, what's worked, and what we can improve on going forward. The third thing I just wanted to talk about was our tech challenge. So again, this is something that we brought in as part of our economic recovery programme. This was an idea of working with our digital creative sector that we have a very strong presence of in Warwickshire, particularly around Leamington, and asking them to come up with innovative solutions that could help our town centres. And we've funded 3 projects through that tech fund. 2 are still in progress to come through, but the first one did go live in May and was our Leamington local young talent festival. And this was around providing a marketplace for young creatives. We used the programme basically identified shops within Leamington where these young creatives could sell their wares, and we also improved empty shop fronts in Leamington, so they were painted up and displays were put in of the creatives, young creatives, and the market, effectively a marketplace for what they were doing, backed up by a website that promoted all this and had a kind of a route map and discounts and a way of promoting and connecting people to the local young creative talent that we have in the area. Proved really popular. I think it's had a really strong success. It generated additional footfall into the towns. It made the town centre look much nicer because we painted up the window fronts and put these measures in. Again, pulling through an evaluation report on that, which we can share and we'll put on our website. But it's been a really interesting process around how you can work with retailers, landlords, young businesses who don't necessarily have a presence, and pulling it all together in a sort of a creative technology package. I think that's the other thing we just wanted to talk about, I suppose, just to flag up, because those we're working on the business support side, helping our businesses. We're also working, obviously, with residents around skills. There is support in there you'll talk about, you'll see about our redundancy support package, which thankfully hasn't been as busy as we had feared, but that's still in place. But one thing we are very conscious of is that school children are struggling to have proper careers advice and help during this time, because you can't go into businesses, you can't do their normal work, which will impact upon their career opportunities in the future, because we know that career exposure to businesses and career information is really helpful for young people. So what we've put in place is a digital solution to that. We've been doing a number of videos, working with our business sector to develop videos of businesses who are sort of talk through what they do, talk through the sort of roles they have, and we've done a number of those. I think 30 have been done now. We put them on our on our website, and schools are using that as a real tool to talk to their their pupils around career opportunities in Warwickshire. Part of that is also talking about the training providers and promoting apprenticeship opportunities as well. So that's something which you can also have a look at. That's on our Warwickshire Skills Hub website. So just the sort of key highlights I wanted to flag on there, but obviously there's a lot in there, and I'm sure we're happy to take questions.
Thank you. We've got Councillor Camcor, as portfolio holder, you wanted to come in as well.
Yes, Chair. Just to say that the document is very detailed, and a lot of work has been done by the economy team, and the paper demonstrates that. One thing I will say is, just as businesses have had to be agile and feet of foot, so has the team, and it's demonstrated within the document before us today. You will see that it hasn't been easy for some of the businesses to have that stop-start initiatives coming through, or programmes coming through central government, which doesn't help the hospitality and hasn't helped many other businesses. So this was just, I think this is a whistle-stop tour document as to exactly how much has been done within Warwickshire. And I think going forward, this is a really good paper that comes to ONS, so that you can actually see just how much support we at Warwickshire County Council are providing our local businesses, not just in one particular area, but right across Warwickshire. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. Any members? Councillor Sinclair.
If I may, I had a couple of questions, if that's acceptable.
Please do.
Allow me to just remove it from there. The first one, I think you answered, but could I just confirm? For a business that makes an application to the fund that is unsuccessful because they, through their perhaps lack of experience, aren't able to complete the application, are they provided, through those other consultants you mentioned, with guidance on how to fill in the form better? That was the first question.
I think we need to just change over microphones. It's okay. Oops.
So, hi, I'm Alison Robinson. I'm the Strategy and Commissioning Manager for Economy and Skills, so I can answer that question. So for those applications, so for the first round, we were, I suppose, slightly disappointed by the number of applications that weren't eligible, and it was something that actually has been seen by the district and boroughs as well in their grant funding, so we recognised there was a problem out there. So for the second round, we did quite a lot of extra work in preparation. We arranged for an extra window of information before the grant went live. We did a webinar, which we then recorded and put on the website. And obviously the team were there to help people answer their questions around application forms. So we did more for the second round to try and help those people that hadn't been successful in the first round, in an attempt to try and help people with that. I think it's a reflection perhaps on how desperate people are potentially for funding. So some of the applications were more speculative, and we had to take a firm line sometimes on what was right to make sure that the funding was allocated in a fair and appropriate way.
Understood. May I continue?
Yes, please.
The second question was, we talked about the Survive, Sustain and Grow initiative, and I think there was mention of outputs, as it were, of the difference that was made. Did I pick that up correctly, that there will be a report that identifies the investment that's gone in and the return on that investment, if you like, that will be published?
Yes, so we've definitely been recording the outputs all the way through. We're really quite proud of the Survive, Sustain, Grow. It's been really, really successful. So not only is there a report coming to evaluate it, I think we need to do some more work on promoting it because of the help the dedicated help and specialist advice that we've given businesses through this programme has been got some fantastic feedback from it, and something we should be promoting and considering how we build some of that then perhaps into future programmes.
In that same vein, the Tech Challenge Fund, again, as Councillor Core mentioned, lots of great stuff in here. And it sounded to me as if that piece of work that you did digitally was very successful and worked well in Leamington. Are there any plans, how do you take that great practice and share it amongst our other towns?
Yeah, so absolutely. So one of the things that we've already been talking about with other officers is how we take some of those learnings and share them potentially through other towns. That's already happening. I think I went into Leamington, and the decoration of some of the vacant shops is really, really quite successful, covering up the fact that they are empty. So that's something we have been talking about.
Perfect. And the final point was you talked about the Warwickshire Skills Hub, and there's some mention of social media activity. If there are materials that can be shared with councillors that we ourselves can share to our residents and networks, if they're not already, could they be, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we do quite a lot in the Skills Hub through social media, so I'll make sure that is circulated as wide as possible.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any Councillor Jelsey? Just wait a moment for the microphone.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I have a question about the Further Education Transition Fund, which is a new fund. It's two questions, actually. One, has the fund opened for bids? And if so, what is current take-up? Thank you.
Thank you. Just wait a moment for the microphone to get to you.
So the Transition Fund is currently open. Off the top of my head, I want to say it's open until the 28th of June. And we are seeing a good take-up already. So we haven't had time to look through the applications yet, but the team fed back yesterday that we're already seeing people putting applications in, so we're hopeful of a good response to that.
Thank you.
Is there another question? Or,
No,
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members indicating? I have no other members indicating. I have a couple of questions myself, in actual fact. Councillor Sinclair, you touched on the point about the rollout of this in Leamington Spa and other areas. How's that going to affect, impact, or be rolled out in other areas, given the timescales for getting bids in and things? Could someone give us some indication in relation to that, if there's how that rollout will happen in other areas? Mr. Aiknell. Yeah. Oh, going to you.
So if we're discussing the Leamington Young Talent Festival, that was a specific piece of funding from the Tech Challenge, and there's two other pots that were two other applicants that were funded from the Tech Challenge that have yet to happen, that are happening in other places in the county. I think we've got some more work to do on understanding how we support towns now to deal with some of those empty properties. So there's quite a significant amount of work going on. Some of it which will be sort of those sort of measures that we found through the Leamington pilot, where we could perhaps look at decorating shops, but we're also looking at use of high street spaces for co-working spaces and things like that. So it's an ongoing piece of work as we start to recover from the pandemic and see how high streets have been affected. And I think it's fair to say that it's not been consistent across the county. Some places have been affected more than others, and actually some parts of the county are seeing quite strong demand for high street spaces at the moment as well. So it's a little bit of a preparing ourselves for whatever outcome happens as we start to unlock.
Okay, thank you. And the other question I'd got was in relation to the school videos and how we're getting that information out to enable the youngsters to be able to access that. Obviously through the schools, but also is it advertised on our websites? Is it readily available? And what sort of signposting are we doing for that?
So, yeah, it's absolutely readily available through the schools. It's also easily available from the Skills Hub website. And we do use it actually in wider promotion of inward investment opportunities to demonstrate some of the opportunities we have for young people in the area as well. So it's been really successful, and we're using those videos a lot.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. I don't see any other indications, any other hands. No one else will move on. If members are happy with that update, thank you very much for those updates. We do then move on to agenda item 4, Bermuda project update. You've all been, sorry. Sorry, Ms. Tompkins is Assistant Director for Environment, is it?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Scott Tompkins, Assistant Director for Environment Services. So to give you the update on Bermuda. So members will be very aware of this scheme because it's been to scrutiny previously. And pre-election, scrutiny had asked for an update to be provided because we were about to start construction on the scheme. I'll just run through some of the highlights, and then I've got the officers that are directly involved in delivery here with us today. So if you have any questions, technical questions, we can try to answer those for you. So the Bermuda scheme, we awarded the contract to a company called CR Reynolds, and that was done in the spring. And we have most recently they've just established their compound on site for doing the works. And works has now started on St. George's Way, so some of the removal of curbs and some of the work that to be done in the preparation work to be done on St. George's Way. There's also one of the important bit of work that's ongoing at the moment is that we've been doing some monitoring of the gas barrier. So there, for those members that don't know, there is a existing historical gas barrier there from the landfill site that was established there previously, and that monitoring work will inform the final design work on the scheme to let us know how much work we have to do in protecting that gas barrier for the future. So that's still one of the unknowns that's left on the scheme. And then in 3.5 in your report, we also mentioned that we've got the additional footway and cycleway work that has been going on. So there's some design work going on the putting in the additional cycleway facilities and a pedestrian crossing on the Bermuda Road, and both of those are being managed by the team within the existing budget. So phase 1 of the scheme is the St. George's work, which is the eastern side of the scheme. And that's going to take place between now and this winter. That will be followed by the actual works on the bridge itself to make the bridge usable. And then phase 2 of the scheme will be completed in late 2022, which is the bit of the work on Bermuda Road on the western side of the scheme. So I think I'll leave it there as an update, and then have any questions you want to ask. And I believe as well in the scrutiny work program that this is coming back to scrutiny again. And in the autumn winter. So
yes, thank you for that, Mr. Tompkins. Yes, members will be aware that this is a briefing note to update us, as we are at the moment awaiting a full report on this. It was agreed at the previous council overview and scrutiny committee meeting that we would have a full report on the Bermuda project, and that's coming to hopefully to the September meeting. It's planned to come to that meeting. Do any members have any other questions at the present time? Councillor Chilvers.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for that update. I've got a couple of questions. Just in the first one, in paragraph 3.5, it mentions the extension to the shared footway, cycleway, as an additional piece of work. I just wondered if there's any further information on kind of the timescales about when that would happen and where we are with that.
So that bit of work is in phase 2 of the program, so that will be the latter half of the scheme, so 2022 before that's completed.
But is there presumably we have to work it up and decide what we're going to do?
Yeah, so the design work is happening now, I'm not sure when that design work will be completed, but we will need to have it completed fairly soon, as we need to understand the cost implications to the scheme.
Shall I carry on? Yeah.
You've got another question?
I've got another one, yeah.
Carry on.
There's a huge...
Well, you've got the microphone.
Yeah, thanks. There's a huge amount of compensation attached to this scheme, which I think is mainly related to noise, but I just wanted to find out, like, that estimate of £1.5 million for compensation, I think, for residents along that road. Is that still what we're expecting it to cost, and how far have we got with that?
Yeah, really difficult question to answer. That is the worst case scenario, is the 1.5 million. There's surveys that were done pre the scheme going in, and there'll be surveys done post scheme, and those will all be used to help make judgments on any claims that are made by residents.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Sinclair, just wait a moment for the microphone.
Thank you. I noted £112,000 as a contingency within the budget, which represents roughly 1% of the total budget. Question in two parts: is that a typical level of contingency, and is that sufficient in your experience to ensure that the whole thing doesn't go over?
So, as a general principle, and when we're delivering major schemes, we tend to have different levels of contingency at different points in the scheme. So, at the early stages of a scheme, when we're at feasibility, it tends to be around 40% contingency, when there's still a lot of unknowns. But when we get to the point where we're actually tendering and delivering the job, we always anticipate around about a 10% contingency in a scheme at that point, because there should be less unknowns. There's still quite a few unknowns in this scheme because of the way this scheme is developed, and the gas barrier being one of them, and the final design work on the additional facilities that are going in are still a bit unknown.
But unless my mental maths is wrong, it's a 1% contingency, not a 10% as we stand.
That's not the only contingency that's in that budget. So happy to provide. If you look at the previous scrutiny papers, it shows a full, in the paper that went to cabinet, it shows a full breakdown of the costs in the scheme and what contingency has been held.
So there is further contingency beyond that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Sinclair. Any other members? Councillor Baxter-Payne. Yes.
It's a question that relates to the contingency a little bit. Has any contingency been allowed for the increasing cost of materials due to the ongoing works on HS2 at the moment, or the shortage of materials that HS2 is causing?
Yeah, we haven't put a specific contingency in for that, but that would be expected to be covered within the general contingencies within the scheme. We are monitoring that very closely at the moment across not just this scheme, but all of our delivery works, because there has been indications, there's been some indications, particularly on aggregate, where HS2 is causing increases in prices across the industry, but we haven't seen that come through in anything just yet.
Yeah.
You want to come back?
Like I say, I know that one of the major aggregate suppliers is saying they've got 1 million tonnes less sold than they will produce this year.
Okay, but we do have a contract which is covered. Is that covered in the contract, the supply?
Let me just...
Yes, I know it's Colin.
Okay. Sorry, just checking with officers on where we're at that at the moment, and we have had some early warnings from the contractor about concerns about supply and concerns about costs and supply. So, but we'll pick that up through the management of on the project.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I am aware also that there was a significant contingency built into the previous allocation of funding for this. Hopefully there will be sufficient there to ensure it's covered in relation to the delivery of the programme. I've got a couple of questions myself. I haven't seen any other member indicating. Just a couple of questions. You mentioned the development of the further scheme on the west side of Bermuda Road. I'm presuming that will also be taking place in consultation with the local member, Councillor Golby, to ensure that they're fully informed and kept abreast of what's happening in relation to the development as that scheme is drawn up.
Yes, absolutely. Councillor Golby's been involved in the design work. We've actually had meetings with her on site to look at the crossing, particularly on Bermuda Road.
And the final point I was going to ask, you mentioned a couple of delays in the scheme there. We see in the papers that the scheme is due to be completed 21-22, the winter of 22, I'm presuming. Is that still on the timescales? Are we still working to those timescales?
Yeah, that is the latest position. We're still on track for that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Obviously, we do have another report coming later in the year, which will give us further opportunity to consider this item. And thank you very much for that, Mr. Tompkins. No other members indicating. Move on to item. It isn't. It's just an update. It's not for noting. Move on to item 5, which is a verbal report. Or presentation, should I say? And I've lost the agenda now. There we go. Developer design guide. Is that again yourself, Mr. Tompkins? Would you be able to come down to the front with this one and just be able to present it from down here?
Yeah. Just so you can. Thank you.
So back to me again. I'm going to introduce this item, and then Chris Simpson from our delivery team is going to do a short presentation for you to update you where we're at with this. So pre-election, an email was sent out to all members, which was introducing a version of the design guide and offering members an opportunity to feed back to us on that. So I know you get lots of emails in your inbox, so we did think it was really important that we probably came to scrutiny as well to highlight this consultation. We've been doing this consultation not only with members but with planning officers at districts and borough councils. We've also been talking to developers that we work with around the county as well. And Chris is going to cover some detail on that. So the design guide is best practice in the industry. It is what an authority sets out, and it's quite a long, detailed document. I wouldn't expect you to read all of it, but essentially it sets out to any developer what our standards are for if a developer wants to build on our network, if a developer wants to build a road or a housing estate and they want us to adopt the roads and adopt the drainage and adopt the street lights and all those assets that we then have to maintain forever and a day. This guide sets out the standards for which we expect and will hold them to account to. Now, we've always had standards, but it's never been, I think, open and clear to developers where we are on local issues with the national standards. And that's what this design guide does. So it's been warmly welcomed by the developers. And I'll stop stealing Chris's thunder now and let him give a bit of the presentation. So.
Thanks, Scott. So I've just done, as it's a verbal report, and I didn't quite know what you knew about the design guide. I've just done got a few slides which we actually used for a developer forum a few months ago. And it sets out our approach and what the background is, a little bit about the content, and it is quite a technical one, as Scott was saying, a bit about the consultation on stakeholder engagement, and a bit about the timetable, what we're going to be doing going on. So we talk about the approach. I mean, actually, I don't know about members know, but actually this is going to supersede a document we've had since 2001, which was called the Warwickshire Guide. So it's high time this needs updating. And it's actually a collaborative effort across quite a number of groups. I work in engineering design services, and we've only done a little aspect of this. Quite a number of different groups have been involved. And as you can see here on the side, we've got all the different parts of the document, and it ranges from street design, which is really the residential roads, through to traffic calming, even with called highway green infrastructure. It's a posh way of saying landscaping. And we've got historic environment, that's archaeology. You know, it covers a lot of different groups. And I've been involved in trying to coordinate it and getting a sort of cohesive document, which we've now got on the website and we've gone out to consultation. The purpose we've done this is that actually, when we've had designs put forward for planning in the past, quite a few of them haven't been compliant. And developers spent a long time and money putting this together, put an application in, and been quite disappointed when we've said, actually, we don't like that, go away and do it again, because it's just not going to be suitable for our highway network. Doesn't get the relationship off to a good start, and there's quite a bit of time arguing to and fro and convincing them, developers, that they had to agree to what we want to do. So we want to save that time for both ourselves and for the developers, and get compliant design by signposting them and telling them what we're going to expect, and therefore saving abortive work. So a little bit about the details. So one particular aspect is we're really encouraging pre-application meetings, meeting with our development management team to discuss any issues. They should see, from using the guide, the answers to most of their questions, but they probably want some confirmation about something, some aspect, or should we do traffic signals here or a roundabout, etc. What's the best solution? What does Warwickshire want? Encouraging all that to have some meetings and make sure that they don't go off and do anything that we won't want. You're hearing that sort of pattern. One of the key issues we have is about which standards to use. Now, there's sort of two national standards. We're not trying to rewrite those. What we're saying is that these are the most appropriate standards to use in this location. And we've got a flow chart here, just so which developers can then follow, bear in mind what sort of road it is, how fast the traffic will be going, so they can see what sort of standards they should be applying in these cases. For those of you who know, there's a lot of developer work that Warwickshire do, and we like to have control of that, which is quite different to our neighbouring authorities like Coventry and Solihull, for instance. And often developers who've not done work for us before will say, well, other authorities don't do it that way. Why are you doing it that way? And so we have to say, well, we like to be in control. So we've signposted that and given details of the legal agreements, which cover our various, what we call Section 278s or 106s, so they can see what they're like, the sort of templates, so they can see the sort of legal obligations they're going to be obliged to adhere to, such as providing a cash bond or whatever. And I think this is going to be really good because they didn't have that information before, so it was always a surprise to them. For those that don't know, we make sure that there's no financial risk to the authority when carrying out developer work. So it's all the risk is on them. So these legal agreements help keep that in place. As Scott mentioned, we've done some consultation with stakeholders. We've had some really good feedback from both developers and the local planning authorities. And they came back at the end of April, and we're just taking that in, reviewing it and deciding what changes we need to make to the draft documents before actually we take it forward to the next steps. So actually, what the next steps will be. So we incorporate the document. We're actually aiming to take a final version to the appropriate council committee to make it become a policy. Now, it's quite important that we have a policy, because if somebody challenges the planning decision and it goes to a planning inspector inquiry, the inspector can see that actually the county council has got a policy in place and can say, hopefully, to the developer who's arguing the case that actually you should know what the policy is. They've set it out. It's clear to see, so why aren't you following it? And hopefully agree with us when we're being challenged. We're hoping to have the agreement by council in place by the end of the summer, and we can go on from there, and it'll be on our website so developers can access it. Just one last point. I mentioned further work on community sums. For those that don't know, community sum is sort of a cash payment we'll get. And in this case, normally for the design guide, it's for help us to maintain the asset once it's been built. So developer will pay for any enhanced materials, fancy paving, etc., planting, to make it all look nice for when they want to sell their housing development or make their shop, new supermarket look nice. But after that, they walk away, and we County Council have to maintain it. So we're trying to make sure that we get sufficient community sums to cover those maintenance costs, at least for the first 10 years. Well, we can't do it for ad infinitum, but get a sufficient amount. We've got some further work to do. We already get commuted sums, but we think we can get more. Some of our neighbouring authorities get a bit more than that, so we're looking at them and maybe stealing some of their ideas, for want of a better term. That's it for my presentation, so happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Councillor Fradgley. Just wait.
Thank you. Can I just ask, does the design guide cover the construction of islands and road junctions with cycling, safe cycling in mind?
Yes, definitely. And there's quite a big section about cycle provision in there, because to outline that we are expecting them to come forward with appropriate cycle provision, but they might need to come to talk to us at the pre-app meeting saying, where do you want the cyclists to go? So we've got cycle routes and desire lines, we understand those. We'll be able to explain what we want them to incorporate within their designs.
Because that would be very, very a good step forward, because in the past, obviously, cycle provision hasn't really been part of the most design work. Cyclists sort of find their own way.
Sometimes it's felt as a bit of an afterthought.
Absolutely.
That's normally because they've already prepared it without the cycling in there, and then we're trying to say, well, we want cycling. Well, we haven't got the land to do that. We haven't got the space. So if they're aware of our intentions beforehand, hopefully they will plan accordingly.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Councillor Sinclair.
Thank you. My experience with most, if not all, design guidelines is that when they go live, as opposed to being in theory, they hit the odd bump. Have you got flexibility after 6 months, 12 months, a period to evolve them to fit that actual reality as you find it?
We have. I mean, because it goes to committee, it's going to become a policy. But we've tried to be clever and got quite a lot of appendices which are linked to a website, a web page, so we can update things that way without having to come back. So it's going to be tricky, as you say.
And linked to that, do you have a plan for review after a particular period of time where any amendments through your appendices could or would be made?
At the moment, I haven't thought about that far. I think it's a good point. Bear in mind, we're talking about updating something that's 20 years old. We ought to definitely come a lot sooner than that. So probably up to Scott to say, I think, after 3 years, let's have another look at it again. I think we'll probably have a look how well it's doing, to be perfectly honest. If internally I've said, if we save 75% of our time arguing with the developer about you should be doing this, and they come to us with something we're happy with, this is a winner. It's going to save so much time, not for officers, only for officers, but also for developers. So we'll see how it goes, really. I think if we're getting lots of problems, we'll have to review it sooner. That's clearly.
Understood.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sinclair. Councillor Humphreys.
A question about, these are guidelines, and they're not statutory. Sorry?
Yeah.
It's, the guidelines, there's no statutory for... And I've sat on the other side of this when I built a place. I can remember building a warehouse in Trentham Lakes, and the council had a wish list that was about, well, it felt like it was 1 million miles long when I first got it, but we sort of pared it down to what we thought we could afford as well at that time. So are they going to be able to come back? And because they're bearing in mind, developers have to work within budgets. Thank you.
Definitely, it's gone up. The standards we're talking about are appropriate national standards, and if you don't design to that, you can be hauled up in front of the coroner's court if there's in the worst case is a fatality or whatever. So we have to make sure things are designed safely. As it's a policy, we're hoping that it gives us a bit more weight to try and influence them to do something we want to do, because it matches a lot of the council's objectives. It's one way of trying to achieve those. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Chilvers. Just wait for the microphone.
Thank you very much. Just to sort of follow on from Councillor Fradley's question about the inclusion of cycling and other modes in design, I'm a bit concerned that the introduction and the top level doesn't send a clear enough message that we as an authority would welcome designs that encourage modal shift to cycling and walking. Just to read one paragraph in the opening introduction, it says, accommodating an increase in travel demand and ensuring access to key employment opportunities, education and health is, with minimal delays, crucial to support Warwickshire's economy. This must be done while ensuring the impacts are effectively mitigated to protect local communities and environment. That, to me, could easily be read by a developer as saying, build bigger road junctions, which is what historically they have done. And as you say, by the time that they come to you, it's almost too late to do that. Could we not send a clearer message up front that we would really welcome schemes that, with an evidence base, would encourage modal shift and try and get developers to start from there, rather than, as you say, at the moment, they tend to start by just building a bigger road junction and then it's difficult to row back from that.
I agree. If the introduction says that, it probably just needs a tweak to change some emphasis. I'm sure there are definitely elements of it, particularly in the pre-application sections, which are saying, look, we're encouraging cycling, modal shift, etc. But I think you're quite right, up front, we should be stating what our priorities are. So I will certainly look at that. That's great feedback. Thank you.
Also got Mr Tompkins who wants to...
Yeah, if I could just come in on a couple of things, Chair. Firstly, Councillor Sinclair's question about updating. I think currently the Department for Transport is looking at a review of the design guide for roads and bridges, which is one of the national standards. So one of the things that will probably drive updates for us in the future is when things change nationally, and we've got to adapt to that. So that would be that's probably within the next 3 years, which is when I would expect us to do another update. I wanted to just highlight the enhanced materials bit that Chris spoke about, because quite often, developers, particularly when they're looking at their master plan and putting things together and want something to look really pretty because they're trying to sell that, they quite often include lots of materials. I worked with a site once where they were bringing in granite from China. They put in some very nice materials, but then it's left to the local authority to have to maintain that forever and a day. For us to get a supply of granite from China to replace when it breaks is really expensive, really difficult. So the enhanced materials policy not only makes sure that we've got enough money to cover it, but also encourages that conversation with the developer to say, actually, we'd much rather you use either one of our basic materials or a material that's local, either within Warwickshire or within the region that we can get a hold of in the future to be able to make repairs. So it's an important aspect of the policy. And then finally, the bit about encouraging cycling. This is exactly the kind of feedback that we need from members. So this is the opportunity through this consultation before we finalize the document and take it through its governance processes for approval. We need to get that sort of feedback. So we're very happy to take that away and look at it.
Thank you. Councillor Chilvers, you wanted to come on?
Yeah, great. Well, thank you for sort of taking that point on board. And just a follow-up question, just to check, does the guide sort of fully integrate the LTN 120 sort of cycle infrastructure design that came out in the middle of last year?
Definitely referenced and with a link.
Great.
In there. Yeah, so yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other members. So I have a couple of quick questions. You mentioned briefly working with developers, and you skipped across the districts and boroughs. Obviously, it's paramount as the planning authorities that they are on board with this.
Yeah.
You mentioned about the discussions that have been ongoing with them. Are all districts and boroughs signed up to what we're proposing in relation to this policy document? And if so, are we having, or do they have regular meetings to ensure that they are still up to speed in relation to the county's requirements? I'm not sure who's...
Chair, I'll take
Yep,
that question.
Mr Tompkins.
The answer is absolutely. You know, our district and borough planning colleagues are hugely important in this process. We've involved them not only in the development but in the consultation. We've also put together a developer forum, which is bringing together all the key developers around the county and our districts and borough colleagues so that we can get feedback from the developers on what's working, what's not working, et cetera. So, hugely important that districts and boroughs are involved in this.
Thank you. One final comment, and I can see the merit in moving this forward, and it's quite a simple one in my own borough. I've come across issues in relation to the provision of equipment that isn't standard or isn't readily accessible, and it's only as simple as a fencing that's required to be bespoke made. So it does need to, we do need to have some sort of design guide in there and try and keep those costs down wherever possible to the public and the residents. So I think it's a good policy to bring forward, and look forward to seeing it fully developed and hopefully being adopted by the council at some point. See no other members indicating. Thank you very much for that presentation. Thank you. Mr Simpson, Mr Tompkins, thank you for that. We then move on to, just need to change the screens. Okay, move on to item 6, Warwickshire Recovery Investment Fund feasibility update. Again, a verbal report. Mr Dave Aitonhill is just going to give us a presentation on that. Thank you, that's helpful.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so what we thought we'd just give the point of this presentation is to give you a quick overview to the Warwickshire Recovery Investment Fund. It's been on a bit of a journey, and you probably will have come across it before, but we just wanted to give a quick update. But particularly, we're just finalising the work around how we engage with the business community and how we promote this and work with businesses to access this fund. And that bit is still sort of being worked up and finalised. So I thought it'd be really helpful to come to this committee to have a look at that sort of business-facing side and your views and comments on that. The governance aspects and the finance side of the RIF has already been considered by the Resources and Fire and Rescue Overview and Scrutiny back in May. But I thought it'd be useful for this committee to have a look at it from that very sort of business-facing side. So this is just a bit of context and timeline of where it's been, and as I said, I'm sure you've been aware of the development of this significant Warwickshire Recovery Investment Fund of proposed £140 million investment over a 5-year period. It came from our work on recovery, which was considered by Cabinet in June and approved by Council for the recovery plan in September 2020, where we said we would look at developing a case for a RIF. Cabinet approved the business case in February, and it just last week considered the business plan and approved the business plan, but that is going to full council on the 1st of July. So just a quick overview as to what it is. As I say, it's very much in response to the pandemic and our economic recovery, recognising that we need to invest to stimulate and support the future growth of the economy and that recovery. And we know that there's a gap in finance out there in the market. This has existed pre-pandemic, and we think will be exacerbated because of the pandemic. Our research and engagement with British Business Bank, Finance Market, the Chamber of Commerce, Local Enterprise Partnership, Growth Hub and others have all indicated that there is a gap in the market of provision of finance, particularly in that area of between £500,000 and £5 million of debt finance. If you want lower volumes of money, there are sources of funding for that by and large. If you're able to secure 5-10 million plus loan funding, debt financing or equity financing, again, there's a reasonably strong market for it. There is a gap in that mid-range. So we're looking to fill that gap. Our ambition is it will, of course, drive economic growth and productivity within the economy. It will stimulate new investment. It will bring private sector investment into the economy. Our forecasts suggest it will create a significant number of jobs if we do this right. At the moment, our model will say sort of 2,200 plus jobs, new jobs to be created, and we should safeguard almost double that, 4,000 more in the economy by working with our existing business base. And it will really put Warwickshire on the map. There's not many other local authorities doing anything like this at the moment and are putting this sort of investment into an access to finance programme. So we think it will make Warwickshire really attractive to inward investment as well. And we're already getting inquiries from inward investors on the back of it. So again, will help stimulate that growth in the economy. And for the council, it will generate a small positive net return if we do this right. Our forecasting and our modelling suggest it will bring a small net positive return to the council, and obviously it will help safeguard business rates and council tax as we go forward. This is the reason, and you'll have seen this probably in other forums, but this is just looking at some of the forecast economic impact. I mean, it's very pleasing to see that the recovery is actually taking hold, and the depths of the impact on the economy of the pandemic probably wasn't as bad as we first initially thought, largely because of a lot of the support measures that have been put in place by the government. But it has had a significant impact on the economy, as we know, in certain sectors. And you can see on that left diagram the significant drop in economic output and then our modelled recovery journey up to 2025. The most realistic scenario, central scenario, gets us back to where we were pre-pandemic by about the end of 2023. But if we look at employment is going to be likely to be more sluggish. Our forecast suggests that employment growth will be more sluggish. And we've got an optimistic, pessimistic and central scenario there. And even on the most optimistic scenario, we're not quite back at the levels of employment that we saw pre-pandemic by 2025. So although recovery is gathering pace and we know that all the economic measures are looking positive at the moment, there is still that underlying nervousness by the business community, particularly about what the future will hold, particularly around future investment. Most have driven down their reserves, their cash flows are very low. The government's support schemes will come to an end and be phased out, which will then have a further impact on those businesses. So there is a fear that towards the end of this year, there might be another wave of business impacts because of that sort of pressure bearing down on businesses. And from a finance perspective, we know banks are likely to be a little bit more nervous about investing in that scenario, so hence why we think this will help fill an interesting gap in the market. We also know that coming out of recession is a good time for new startups and new business opportunities and new investments. All historic recessions have shown that business startup rates go up. So we want to be able to capitalise on that and support that new business growth. As I say, we think that there was a pre-pandemic, there was a strong demand for finance being unmet. We think that will be increased going forward, hence the scheme. What would the scheme look like? It's broken into three broad programmes. The 140 million overall will be split into the Business Growth Fund, which will be about 90 million, and will be predominantly larger loans for medium to larger sized companies. There's a local enterprise scheme, which is a lower value, around 10 million, and this reflects the higher risk that is likely to be present with these sorts of investments. So the business growth will be on more secure investments, so we're confident about putting public money, a greater chunk of public money into that. But the local enterprise side is going to be really important, but it's likely to be slightly riskier, hence at a smaller level. But they will be smaller, much smaller investments over a much broader range of businesses. And then there's a property and infrastructure fund to help provide the development of commercial premises to support growth, something, again, we know is a shortage of in Warwickshire. Targeting our investments, the two key funds, the business growth and local enterprise, we are looking to sort of focus them down. So as I said, business growth is looking at existing businesses or those looking to locate in Warwickshire, will be predominantly medium to large size companies, so 50 employees plus. We'll be looking at loans of between £500,000 up to 10 million. A focus on future growth sectors. We really want to see this fund as a way of driving future economic growth. So we want to focus it on some of the strengths that Warwickshire has, but also where the future growth potential lies. So automotive technology, digital creative, including gaming, the future of mobility, and that's thinking about how the transport and logistics sector is going to move forward, last mile deliveries, electric vehicle deliveries, and low carbon technologies more broadly. But we're also recognising that as an economy, we also have other priority sectors, wider advanced manufacturing, tourism, modern methods of construction, health and well-being, and our rural-based businesses. So that's how we're looking to target the Business Growth Fund. The local enterprise fund, as I say, is going to be much focusing on smaller businesses, existing businesses or startups or early phase businesses or even social enterprises, predominantly small businesses or micro, so under 50 or even under 10 employees. Again, a similar sort of focus on our manufacturing base, digital creative, digital technologies, culture, tourism, hospitality, low carbon technologies again, but also retail, community-based businesses, creative industries and health and well-being and other supply markets to the County Council. So quite a broad range, but still trying to focus on where we think our particular growth are. And again, as we say, although a smaller pot, we expect greater number of investments, but at a smaller level, generally less than £100,000 investments. All of these are likely to be debt finance initially, so loans to businesses. We did talk in the early phases about equity investment, but at the moment we're looking at debt finance because it's slightly, we can secure it, it's a safer investment for the council at this current time. We will look at how that goes, and I think this is part of the point I put there at the bottom. This will be reviewed and updated annually through an investment strategy that will be considered by council. And we may, as it goes forward, we may look to bring in a small element of equity finance where it's appropriate. This is a bit complicated, but I'll try and talk you through it. This is a process map of how we expect to go out to businesses and talk to them about how we're doing this. It's colour-coded, but I'll try and explain that. So effectively, we'll be doing a lot of communication and marketing once it's launched to get businesses interested. And we'll expect a number of businesses to make contact. That will come into our economy and skills team, where Alison heads up, and we'll do an initial assessment of those businesses. And the plan is to do quite a quick turnaround. We'll look at what they're proposing. We'll see whether it fits with the fund and whether it's appropriate. And if it is, what we'll do is then appoint a dedicated advisor. We're pulling together a pool of advisors, consultants who can work with us on this. We'll appoint an advisor who'll do an initial meeting with that business, work out what it is exactly they're doing, have a quick look at their business plan, have a look at their management structure, have a look at their finances, work out what they're doing, what the plan is, and what the likely level of security and credit worthiness of the company is. From that, we can give them an indicative assessment. We can say, we think you're going to be suitable for this fund, and broadly, we're looking in a range of an interest rate of X%, and I'll explain that in a bit more. And then the business can make a decision whether or not that's appropriate for them or not. If it's not appropriate, then our advisors will continue to work with them to explore other avenues for them, because we've done this for many years, working with businesses to look at finance. So if it's not appropriate, that's fine, and we'll work with them to find other sources. But if it is appropriate, then obviously we'll then commit further resources to them, and the business needs to commit further resources into them putting that business plan together, pulling all the various paperwork together, all the necessary information that would enable us to do due diligence on that application. So then this is where it splits. If it's into the Business Growth Fund, that 90 million bigger pot, that's something that Warwickshire County Council is going to look after itself. We're going to manage that internally. What that will do, an application will come into us. It will then go into a finance team. So what we're doing is splitting the functions. Economy and skills is very much the outward focus part of the organisation, working with the companies, deal origination, working with them to look up their business plan. Once it's submitted, we hand it over to the finance team who will do the due diligence to separate those functions in case economy and skills get too close to the company and are advocating it too much. We need a kind of clear blue water and a sort of objective head on to do the assessment and due diligence. That will then, once that's been done, it will go to an investment panel that will be comprised of officers and some external advisors. The investment panel will review the case, the business plan, and make a recommendation to Cabinet. And then the point is to try and condense that as quickly as possible, but do it in a way that's transparent and accountable. If it goes into the local enterprise fund, we're looking to outsource that because it's going to be a lot more applications, a lot more process at smaller levels, and we think that's better done by an external organisation. Also, we might be talking about investment in individuals if it's a start-up, self-employment, and therefore you have to comply with FCA rules on lending. And the council is not a bank, even though we're sort of setting up a bank-like system, but we haven't got those FCA accreditations. So we need someone with that to do that sort of work. So if it goes into local enterprise fund side, it will go externally. They will undertake the assessment and also make decisions on funding based on a criteria we've set via the procurement strategy. And then once it's come out, we will continue to monitor and work with the company. Economy and Skills will work with that company to see how it's going, see what other help we can help with them in terms of employment support, skills support, further business support, and our finance team will obviously continue to monitor to ensure that our investment and our resources is being looked after. We're just still working on this, so I can't actually tell you what the interest rate matrix would be, but this is something we want to get out to businesses as a ready reckoner, and this will be that first part of the assessment that an advisor will do with a company. Effectively, we will have a quick look at creditworthiness. How creditworthy is the company? When you look at these sort of ratings agencies on a company, what do they score? Are they high, medium, or low in terms of their credit score? And then we'll also look at what security they can offer in the marketplace. Again, if you can offer strong security, you can secure the loan fully and they're a very creditworthy company, then the interest rate is going to be very low when we're talking a couple of percent. However, if you don't have much creditworthiness, don't have much track record, and you can't offer that much security for your loan, then obviously there's a risk profile there, and therefore higher interest rates are offered. So this is what we're going to work up. So businesses can see this kind of matrix, can get a sense of where they sit before they even contact us. When they do contact us, our advisors will do a bit more work and give them a bit stronger ready reckoner of what they're looking at. And then obviously right as we go through the process, once we have all the details from the company, we can get a very accurate interest rate, which we'll work on with them. In terms of how we're going to push this out, we're sort of working on three fronts. There's general communications. We want to push this out wide. We want to shout about Warwickshire doing something quite so significant in the economy. It gives a good boost to the economy regardless. So there's a general wide comms to raise awareness and get people interested. We will also do very targeted work within those sectors that we talked about, those priority sectors. So very specific work with sector bodies who represent those groups, with the organisations that are in contact with those businesses. So we've been talking about, we'll talk to Myra, say, who are very strongly connected to automotive technology, to Warwick University and WMG, to the Silicon, Spa and creative industry sector. So we'll be very targeted at those to really raise awareness. And then thirdly, we'll be doing a wide range of case studies to show businesses what we're investing in, because we find that the best way of getting businesses interested in what we're providing is to show examples of what other businesses have benefited from in the past. So we'll be sort of pushing out across those three broad areas. So that was the overview, and very happy to take questions on the RIF.
Quick fly through there, thank you very much. Councillor Sinclair.
Thank you, Mr. Drayton-Hill. It's an excellent presentation and a really fascinating opportunity, I think, to test this as a proposal. I'm interested, please, in how you've identified those market segments that you're going to target. Is it because they are those you would like to be buying this product, or those that you've done through research and understand will have a need for this product?
Yeah. So threefold, I suppose. One, those priority sectors we picked are existing strengths of Warwickshire's economy. We know we have a good base in those sectors already. So we know that we excel in those areas and therefore want to encourage those. Second, we know that those businesses have strong growth potential. Those sector areas have strong growth potential based on forecasting work and sector-based work. Yeah, we're looking at a big drive of this. Actually, was looking at the electrification of the automotive industry. We know that nearly every single automotive manufacturer is now shifting onto an electric vehicle platform, and that's significant investment for those OEMs. But there was also for the supply chain, and we have a huge range of supply chain companies in Warwickshire who supply to those OEMs, those original equipment manufacturer automotive businesses, and they're going to have to change what they do. So a lot of our thinking here was about how do we invest in businesses to help them adjust to the new reality, to the new future growth areas. So we want to invest in that, say, automotive technology sector, future of automotive technology, and help existing businesses, new entrants to the market, and supply chains to adapt and diversify. But then there's others, digital creative, very strong presence, and we want to
look to have a supplementary.
But I do. My nervousness, if I may, to your answer, is you said this is what we want to do. You haven't given me an answer that says you've spoken to those sectors and understood that the product you're offering will appeal to them versus other competitive products. You might well find when you actually go to the market, your product is not attractive and competitive, and or only to certain elements of your desired market are you attractive, and so you have to reconfigure your offer, if I might suggest?
Sorry, yes, sorry, in that place. Yeah, well, so we've done the research with British Business Bank, with the Midlands Engine Investment Fund, with finance providers like Minerva, Midven, Mercia. We've spoken to lots of finance providers around what the product is, what would look like, where the gap is. As I say, we're not there to compete with other funding sources. We're there to sit alongside and to add value to other funding. Our funds will be at commercial rates. They won't be better than or worse than what the market's doing. We wouldn't be able to do that. We wouldn't be able to go better than the market due to, well, it's not state aid rules anymore, it's UK subsidy control rules or whatever, but we couldn't be better than the market. We need to match the market. So what we can do is sit alongside other products, but what we're doing is putting more finance into the system, and we as an organisation are probably prepared to take a little bit more risk than the private sector finance market, hence where we might fill a gap where a business can't raise the full finance. But that's in discussions with the finance community and with business sectors. Our team talk regularly with those key priority sectors because that's part of the work of our investment team. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I should say, sorry, and it will be reviewed on an annual basis. So if we find that we're not hitting the mark, then we can look to adjust or pull out or whatever. So there is a...
That's very comforting to hear. I suggest you might need another dotted line on your drawing that's not linear but loops back to take learnings and reconfigures your offering and your marketing of that offering.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Chilvers. Councillor Chilvers.
I think my question kind of comes at the same topic from a slightly different angle, in that I'm trying to understand, as you say, we're kind of setting ourselves up with some banking functions, yet the local authority is clearly not a bank. And so are we saying by doing this that there is a market failure to provide reasonable loans to certain businesses?
Yeah, so yes, there is a market failure in that there's a lack of supply of finance. Broadly, outside of London and South East, supply of finance is very limited. There is the standard banks, but they take a very risk-strong profile. So new startups, new entrants, those without much of a strong track record in delivering a new product will either find it hard to raise finance or will be penalised with extremely high interest rates. So we know that there is a market failure gap in terms of the quantum of finance going in. This was pre-pandemic. And as I say, the expectation is, and the messages we're getting from the finance market is that the private financial market will tighten its lending rules even further through their risk profile will increase.
But why, if they who are far more experienced in this than we are, think that they need to tighten their risk profile, and yet we're saying, well, actually, we think we can take more risks, that seems to potentially expose us, given that the experts don't think that it's worth that risk.
Yeah, but I'd say we're not in the market of making the £billion profits that the private financial markets are in the market of doing. So our risk profile is slightly lower. We will accept much lower returns on our investment. What we're looking for is just a very slight, small net positive return on that investment. We're not looking to make money out of this. We want our money back, effectively.
So it's an encouragement to growth and regrowth. Yeah. As we get the money back, we can regrow it, sort of thing.
That, will be a decision whether we want to reinvest that money as we go forward, but yes. Okay.
Thank you for that. Councillor Baxter-Payne.
Just picking up on a point that you've just made. In the presentation, you said about interest rates. A business which is obviously more secure, you will look at giving it a low interest rate. Yep. A business with a little bit more risk will have a higher interest rate. If we're looking to encourage people to start business up and invest them, shouldn't the model be that it's a one interest rate for everybody?
Potentially, but that's not quite how the market works. The market works on this risk profile investment, and as I said, we can't undercut the private sector market because we're using public money putting in. We can't offer a business an interest rate of 5% when Barclays Bank would offer 10%, say. because it'd be deemed anti-competitive. So we do have to mirror the market, but we're prepared to take more risks, if that was it. So we match the interest rates, but we're prepared to take more risk at that level of interest rate. We've been operating through Coventry and Warwickshire Reinvestment Trust, a much smaller, reduced programme, which has been loans to businesses, and we've been investing a few £100,000 a year into that programme for the last few years. Yeah, and they operate at this level. They're operating at interest rates of sort of 10 to 12% to small businesses that wouldn't be able to access all the finance that they could nationally through the mainstream. And that's proven very successful. And CWRT turn their income. They don't make much money, but they keep it turning over. So we know that there's not a barrier to businesses taking an interest rate at that level. It works for them if we can get the rest of the systems working. That helps.
Come back.
As the business, obviously, if you're going to charge it a higher interest rate to start off with, would you then look at re-changing the interest rate as the business grows?
Absolutely, yeah. We could do that, or they could do that themselves. So what we're talking about is not having an early redemption charge. So we might offer a loan. If they can then, as they progress and they get assets and they can get a better deal, then we could exit, get our money back, we exit, and they refinance on a better deal. That we will be talking to them actively about that. Because we want the best for the business. Like I say, we're not in it to make the money.
Okay, don't see any other indications. Just a couple of questions from myself. Obviously, this is about Warwickshire investments. I take it that all of the businesses would need to be invested and working within Warwickshire to benefit from these schemes.
That's the primary starting point, absolutely. But we did take this question to actually resources over scrutiny to say, in exceptional circumstances, might we want to think about investing in a business that is just outside our border, but serves our economy. And the example we used was Myra Technology Park. You know, it is technically just outside Warwickshire, but it looks to Warwickshire. Its residents, Warwickshire's residents, you know, its workforce is largely from Warwickshire, and you know we wouldn't want to cut our nose off to spite our face by being very clear that we couldn't invest outside our boundary when there's a business literally just over the boundary but could have a benefit to us. So we've created a little wiggle room in the policy to say in exceptional circumstances where there's a significant benefit to the county's economy, we could invest outside.
Okay, thank you. Don't see any other questions. Thank you very much for the presentation. No other members. Thank you.
Thank you
for that. And we'll move on. Sorry. All right. Oh, right. Okay. Agenda item 7. Scott Tompkins. Are you coming up to present that, or are you going to present it from there? Okay.
Yes, Chair. Thank you. I'm just going to introduce this item. So item 7 is your quarterly performance report on the council plan. And I'm just going to highlight, there's reports there for you to look at, but I'm just going to highlight a couple of things out of there. And then Dave and I are, most of the key indicators in there fall within Dave Ayton-Hill's area or my area. And so we're here to be able to answer any questions you have. So 55% of those key business measures are on track. And in section 2.4, we've highlighted a couple of the good news stories in there, you know, particularly the killed and seriously injured figures coming down. Clearly, that's a direct result of the less amount of traffic that's been on our road network, and the recycling figures, which we talked about earlier in the meeting. Section 2.5, we've highlighted some of the concerns of performance that's not on track. And again, you can see the COVID factor in there, particularly on the employment figures. And then we've also highlighted the ongoing issue that we've had with the special educational needs transport and the cost increases that have been happening there. So really over to members to ask us any questions you want on the performance report, and we'll try to do our best to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Tompkins. Members, open to members for questions. I see no questions. Are members happy to note the report as it's set out? I'm sure officers will be more than happy to ask if you realise something after the meeting I'm sure members, officers will be more than happy to pick up those concerns. Okay. Yep, so that report is noted. Thank you very much for that, Mr Tompkins. Moves us on to item 8, the Community's Overview and Scrutiny Work Programme. Members got copies of this. I've gone past it now. Yeah, I thought it was. There it is. There it is. Any members in relation to the proposals, future work? Obviously, we can reconsider this at any time, and opportunities to bring work in should it be necessary, or to undertake any task and finish groups on any items, or should they look to be appropriate. As I say, the one on here is the Bermuda one, which is now coming to the September meeting for a full report, I understand. Is that correct? Yes. So that's, don't note any other items on the report. Any members got anything to add at this time? We're happy to accept those items, yes. Thank you. I thank members for their input today. I've not been notified of any urgent items, and I've seen no hands up for anything to alert me to that. So I thank members for their attendance and thank officers for the reports. They've been really helpful, useful and informative today, so appreciate your time and thank you all for attending, and do please have a safe journey home. Thank you everyone.